Saturday. I guess this is my sixth day going live. And y'all, I'm still figuring this out. I was on with Ed Parco yesterday, and he was incredibly helpful in helping me figure out some of the tech tools. And all of us, whoever tuned in yesterday, he was incredibly helpful in helping us understand tech tools for setting up lives. He's been going live for the last, I guess it was ever since 2018, he's been going live. So he is quite the expert, and I was so grateful to hear his feedback yesterday and thoughts about what tools we should be using, because y'all, we all need to be creating content, especially in a world of AI, especially in a world where content creation is currency. Who we are and emotional intelligence is the new form of currency. I had this realization a couple years ago. We talk about time as currency. And when we think, though, about a parent and a child, yes, the parent could be giving their child time, dedicating, I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes and spend time with you. But if the parent is distracted, their mind is somewhere else, they're not emotionally present, the child knows that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Actually, I was at a knowing retreat, and one of the attendees, he said that his son at one point was crying about that very thing. Like, they were out to lunch, and his son was trying to actually ask his father questions to get his emotional attention and to like bring him emotionally present in the moment. I love the book, The Power of Now. I just have it on my Audible, and I just kind of listened to it actually when I was in Italy a couple weeks ago. No, Paris. Before I went to Italy, I just was kind of roaming the streets and listening to The Power of Now. And when I hop in the car, I just have it on. And it's just a continuous reminder to be now, be here right now. And y'all, emotional intelligence, emotional presence is the new currency of the day, because our IQ is being replaced with AI. Our intellectual intelligence is being replaced with automated intelligence. And so our emotional intelligence is kind of one of the top most precious commodities we could possibly have in today's time. So with that, I just am so grateful for Ed yesterday talking about how he got started in going live, in the tools that he used, what his setup looked like, and just some of the things that he has employed throughout the years. And he is putting out I think it's a course, and it's going out in the next week or two. So I'm going to have my team take it, because we're using Restream, and he and his team use StreamYard. Like, there's all these different tools, and it's like, which one's the best? So I don't know. But it has been clunky going live every day for the last week. So for those of you who have come with me on my journey, I appreciate your feedback and appreciate your patience as I learn. I want to have my own TV show at some point. I actually think I'm much closer than I thought when I first started this week. So I got some good news earlier this week, and so we'll make a formal announcement soon. But y'all, we have to be moving in the direction of our dreams, even in the smallest capacity. There's this biblical concept of being faithful with little, so that then we can be faithful with much. And I used to have a beautiful house in the middle of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it was on 14 acres, and it was stunning. It was our dream house. My former husband and I, we had so many people out there. We were nestled at the foothills, middle of the Blue Ridge Mountains, but at the foothills of the mountains themselves. And, we could look up and see wineries cascading down the mountains, and it was just absolutely stunning. And I bring this up because we ended up selling our house. And I have, a beautiful little condo, and there's just been this silent discontent over this place, because I know what I had and I know what I dream of. And so what I heard myself saying at the beginning of the year is, I cannot wait to host and begin hosting once I have a house again. And so I actually started looking for houses to buy, but I just realized, I was like, I'm saying I can't wait to host. I'm saying I want to host, but either I'm not being integrous with my words, or I need to change my behavior. Because I can host right now. I have a table and 4 chairs in my little condo, and it's so cute. And I have everything I need to start with the little that I have. and little. I mean, what a blessing. I own this place. It's wonderful. And if I'm not being faithful with the little that I have in front of me, how do I know I'm actually going to act upon my behavior will align with my words when I have a lot more? So we need to really, anytime we say we want something, anytime those words come out of our mouth, we need to do an analysis and audit of our behavior. Is our behavior matching and in alignment with what we claim we want? And if not, we either need to change our words or change our behaviors. And so I started hosting, I hosted a knowing brunch, and then 2 days later I left for 11 weeks. So I just came back, and I'm leaving again. But it was a really, really good reminder for me earlier this year. Are my behavior and words in alignment with what I claim to want and dream of? And we have to start small. And so going live on Monday, I already feel like I'm getting better and just kind of exercising those muscles of practice and putting in the reps. Because y'all, we claim to have these big dreams, and we say these wonderful, profound, verbose desires or dreams or even ideals. And yet we're not doing the actual tangible work to get there or to just put in the reps. And so going live every day is putting in the reps. And already I've just had some really exciting conversations about turning this into something bigger. But I have to practice, and I have to keep hearing feedback. So I would love to hear from you guys. Yesterday, I got good feedback where someone was like, I didn't know who the guest was. And I was like, that's a great point. Because with the Knowing podcast, I have a very formal process. And frankly, on the Knowing podcast, we're in the same room, and it's live, and not live, but it's real time. I can reach out and touch their hand, and it's just, there's such a level of intimacy there. And so I'm practicing not having the intimacy, going virtual with people. And we technically also have, under the umbrella of the Knowing Show, we have 2 different sub-channels, which is the Knowing Conversations, where I'm hosting along with someone else. I have a guest, and then also the Craft and Calling podcast, which is the podcast that we have specifically for blue collar business owners. And that is near and dear to my heart. My family has a 100-year-old painting business, and it's just been such a privilege working with my dad over the past few years, ebbing in and out of very engaged, and then more so focused on other businesses, and then coming back and being partner. And so it's ebbed and flowed being super engaged with my dad, but I'm super excited to get more involved in the coming years and take it into the 4th generation in a more formal manner. But my dad is still kicking and going strong, so he's still managing the business. So what I wanted to talk about today, on my way, I was just with my parents for the last few days in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. We were attending a conference, and I will talk about that tomorrow, because I realize how much of my life I keep segmented. I was actually in my live on Thursday. I was feeling led to talk about business. And for those of you who have followed my journey, talking about business has felt vulnerable for me. And I believe that is primarily due to the fact that the ideal woman, as I was raised to believe she was more meek and gentle and servant-hearted and sweet. And that's who the ideal woman was. And yet there's this other part of me that is strong, and there's a very masculine side. And what we've never really accounted for is the human soul and the human being, encompassing both the masculine and feminine. We've got the men and we've got the women, and women are to be nurturing and caretakers, caregivers, homemakers, and men are to be the providers. And over the last 60 to 70 years, we've been seeing this kind of blend of the woman coming out and taking votes and all of these wonderful elements where she's been taking charge over her life and kind of stepping more into the masculine. We've been seeing more so of the man in the or in the feminine, but we're not talking about just like being the holistic human beyond what society is telling us what it should look like. We're hearing from the feminist voice about what a more so well-rounded woman is. And then we hear from different parts of different niche communities about a man stepping more so into his feminine, rather than taking a step all the way back and looking at the human archetype. I talked on Wednesday about what would it look like if we had the integration of the Spartan and the Athenian, the warrior and the lover. And it's almost like the integration of the left brain and right brain, the analytical and the emotional, and allowing for these parts of us that are ingrained in every single being, and allowing for the holistic integration thereof. So we're no longer actually being taught by society about who we should be, but actually kind of returning to our roots. When we look at children, they're at one point we step in as parents, as aunts, uncles, caretakers, and we say, oh, girls like pink and boys like blue. But when kids are so young, before they're taught what to like, they're wild, and they love babies, and they love they love flowers, and they love trucks, and they love everything. There's just a curiosity. So if we were to take and don the lens of curiosity in the way in which we engage with the world, what parts of us would show up? And the reason why this whole conversation even came up in the first place is because I realized on Thursday that there is a masculine part of me that I've felt some, I don't even know if it's embarrassment. I don't think it's shame. I have to sit with that. It's fear. Yeah, because as I was just thinking about it just now, it's fear over not being accepted, not being wanted, and being isolated and rejected. So Brené Brown in Daring Greatly, she talks so much about fear is ultimately often masked by shame, but it's fear of rejection, fear of disconnection. And y'all, connection and love is just what we crave as human beings. And so anything that could risk disconnection, we often have an aversion to, apart from pulling it into consciousness, examining it, and then deciding, us as adults deciding, rather than our subconscious mind that works on kind of default autopilot behaviors based in childhood and what we experience then. Now, as us, our true self, being in the driver's seat, pulling these subconscious behaviors into consciousness and examining it. So me now, over the last few days, examining this kind of masculine behavior, which when I say masculine, I'm not meaning male. I'm meaning like the analytical. That's what I mean when I say masculine. So that analytical masculine part that is so strong. I love this part of me. It makes me feel I feel so confident when I'm operating in that part of me, the data analytical driven side. But I have felt reticent to bring that into my familial environments and with friends who knew me growing up, because that was such not a part of who I was growing up, because I was in alignment with what people and how people told me I should be, which was just solely operating in the caretaker, nurturing right part of the brain, or left part of the brain, the feminine. So there is also, we talk about the EQ and the IQ, and we also have, so we've got intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence. We also have a spiritual intelligence. There is something that almost supersedes it. So we think about right brain, left brain. There's almost like a level on top, which is the spiritual. And this is just for ease of description, right? I'm not building a theology here. But so we've got right brain, left brain, EQ, IQ, and then we've got SQ, spiritual intelligence. And that is a part that I have rarely tapped into with anyone. And it is probably one of the most intimate parts of me. And I want to be brave and talk about that tomorrow. And that lends to a little bit of what I've been spending my time doing over the last few days. And I never talk about that. And I'm not being fully integrous about who I am without sharing that. So as I've been leaning more so into talking about the IQ in the business over the last couple of months, I am wanting to be brave and lean a little bit more into the SQ, the spiritual intelligence, as I'm going live. And I'm thinking I'll just do that on Sundays because it's a day of rest. So today, after a good number of minutes, we're getting to the topic at hand. On my way home, I was driving home from a conference with my parents over the last few days, and I turned on, there's a film called Toxic Nation by Maha Films, and it is about the copious toxic ingredients in our foods. Y'all, I was away in Europe for 9 weeks, 8 weeks, and I felt wonderful the entire time. And I ate pasta. I ate normal food, right? It was trying to be healthy and trying to be good. And also I was overseas, so I was enjoying myself. I would have a glass of wine or two probably every other day. So I was drinking a glass of wine with dinner, and then was, I was eating bread too. That was another thing. It's also, they never tell you this. They serve cake at breakfast, both in France and Italy. So I don't know what that's about, but clearly they all have a lot of fun. And they're also so well trimmed. It's so weird. So I just was thinking a lot about, I was just thinking about the food, the water, the quality thereof versus back in the States. And right around that time, I started working with a very well-regarded doctor in the particular area of seed oils. And we were working on an offer for her and building out her brand in association with that. And over those few weeks when I was in Italy, I just started doing a deep dive in seed oils. And this film, Toxic Nation, she's actually featured in that film along with RFK Jr. and a few others, very well known in the kind of health movement that we're seeing spring up. And on the way here, I looked up Toxic Nation to listen to it on YouTube, and it wasn't available. So I watched another one. I'll drop it in the comments. I didn't love it, but it was better than nothing. And so what it was, let me go ahead and actually do that right now. Y'all, it was so fascinating. And I'm sure that I really do believe that this Maha Films Toxic Nation is going to be really, really worth watching. But this video that I'm dropping in the chat right now. Oh, Melina, it's so good to see you. Let's normalize breakfast for dessert. I love that. I'm right there with you. Let me see if I actually don't know how to do this. So I'm going to try to drop this in the chat and see if this works. Okay. I hope that came through. Let me know if it did. I'm posting it on the live on Instagram as well. So I don't know if it does. But I'll drop it in the comments after. Y'all, it was so interesting. These seed oils were initially, so back and I'm sharing the little bit that I, learned during this conversation, and go watch it. I don't want to be the voice or the mouthpiece representing this because I'm very early on in my exploration of this topic. But as I was watching this film, what I saw was the American Heart Health Association, back in, I believe it was early 40s, was so small and so like obscure. Procter and Gamble found that there was just so much waste of parts of seeds that were not being used for anything. And so what they did was they invested 1.7 million at the time, which is about 20 million today. So 1.7 million back in 1940s turns out to be about 20 million today. And they invested 1.7 million into the American Heart Health Association. So it blew up overnight. And at the same time, they started basically processing the remains of these seeds and expunging these oils. And the process through which these seed oils go through is the same process that would be made for like factory cleaning supplies. So they would have to heat up the oils to about 500 degrees and oxidize it. And then they have to do one other thing. I forget the exact term from it, but almost to like bring it back, bring the heat back down and make it so that now it can be used as a typical product. And so that's where I have the knowledge gap, and go watch this. But effectively, they bring it up to the level of oxidation that you would for a cleaning supply. And what they started to do was American Heart Health Association started applying their label on canola oil, vegetable oils. And what they started doing was, in American cookbooks, they started switching out Crisco for butter. And then they started saying all animal saturated fat was terrible for you. And right around that time, we started seeing heart disease just skyrocket. And it was so interesting in the video. There were just all these plumb lines going up and up and up. It was so fascinating seeing chronic disease and heart disease just started to rise slowly year over year over year. And it was very much so tied with American Heart Health Association positively, slapping their label on all these seed oils. And also it was more economical at the time too, because it was cheaper to buy seed oils than animal fats. And so very, very fascinating that on the daily average, based on all of the processed foods being whole wheat bread, the same bread that I ate when I was going to school every day, the sandwiches. So nothing unhealthy, right? It was whole wheat. Whole wheat bread is good for you, right? But on the back, it will say made with sunflower oil or canola oil. And even I was looking at cashews. I love cashews. My dad and I will always buy each other cashews. There's peanut oil in there. And I was eating cashews the other day when I came back from Italy. My parents, oh my gosh, they're so, y'all, for any of us who have parents that we really like, that is such a blessing. And already I will sit and look at my dad, and he's only 65. And I'll just look at him and be like, oh, I cannot imagine when you're gone. Let me spend as much time with you as I can. I was just with him for the last few days, and I'm going to hang out with him again for 4th of July. I just freaking love them. But anyways, I came back home from Italy after being gone for almost 11 weeks. And I came back to my condo because there were people Airbnb-ing my house, and they had flowers out, and my dad had bought me a little canister of cashews. And so I didn't really have much other food in the house. And so what I started to do is just eating the cashews. I felt so terrible. I was like, what is happening? Because when I was overseas, I would buy cashews from their little markets and eat them like I normally would. But I just started feeling so strange. And then I picked up the canister and saw that there was peanut oil in there. So I actually stopped eating it and gave it back to my dad. But then I also sent them this video. So I was like, until you change your behaviors, watch this video, eat the cashews, and then let's all cut out seed oils. But y'all, I just felt, and even this morning, so we were driving back, and I saw Chick-fil-A, and I was like, Chick-fil-A. So we all stopped and we got breakfast biscuit. And it's not the best for you, but I just have always kind of assumed that Chick-fil-A is healthier than McDonald's. No, it's not. I looked it up, and there's seed oil in the crust and sugar in the crust that they make the chicken in and fry the chicken in. So I realized it because I was driving home and I was starting to feel sick. So there is something about how I could eat whatever I wanted overseas and come home and just eat very normal food, cashews. That's supposed to be good for you, and eat it and just feel terrible. So y'all, there is something to be said for eating whole foods, eating our fruits and vegetables and meats, and just really paying attention to the labels. There's seed oils in everything. Seed oils in salad dressing. That was something I was at a restaurant, and I was like, I know that this is weird, but I'm trying to, I'm not allowed to eat seed oils right now. So I'm not allowing myself to eat it. So I went up and I asked, and they were like, oh yeah, our balsamic vinaigrette has seed oils. And then they said, there's olive oil and salt and pepper in the back. And I put that on, and it was great. But it's just scary. It is all over our food. So this is what the video said. Upon doing some deep investigation, Americans are eating 2 to 5 tablespoons of seed oils every day. And they gave the visualization. Oh yeah, Melina, I'm right there with you. I cannot eat McDonald's either. And to your point, it's the fog, the brain fog and the stomach issues. And 𝐿𝐴𝐚, you said the only answer is to move to Italy. Yes. Obviously we need to move to Italy. And I'm curious, Melina, what you come up when you look into pumpkin seeds, because I didn't see pumpkin seeds on the list of what you're not allowed to eat. So I'm curious to see what you find about that. But y'all, it's just, okay, so 2 to 5 tablespoons. They gave the visual. So it was, this much seed oil. I think it was 20 pounds. That equals 20 pounds of soybeans. 20. I'm going to Google that. How many pounds? Oh, if I was smart, I'd be using ChatGPT and just talking to my phone. How many pounds of soybeans is 5 tablespoons? And then they also did this with, they also did it I think it was like sunflower oil. What did they do? It was corn. What kind of oil is made from corn? I can't remember what that is. Melina, you're so cute. And Christian, I completely agree. Just sugar and pickles. That's the only thing to eat. That's the only answer. But y'all, it's copious amounts. Okay, so 1 bushel of soybeans is 60 pounds, which equates to 0.5 fluid ounces. No, this is not helping me. All right, so it's giving me all this math. The conclusion, while 2.5 fluid ounces of soybeans might weigh close to 1 pound, that's okay. This isn't helping me at all. So I've got to look this up. 1 bushel of soybeans. All right, so I'll go back to the video. It gives you the dimensions, but it just was like copious. I think it was like 70 ears of corn for 2 to 5 tablespoons of what we would eat, and like pounds and pounds of soybeans for what we would eat on a daily basis. Y'all, it's not how we ate for all of the centuries leading up to today, and even the understanding the process of how these oils are made is incredibly alarming. They go through the same process that we would for health cleaning products. So that was concerning. The second thing was, on my way home back, I flew into, where did I fly into? I flew into LA, went to Venice Beach. Venice Beach is amazing, by the way, super weird, super cool. And then flew to Phoenix, where I was going to go to a mastermind, one of the best masterminds. It's with Chris Voss, Joe Polish, and Nick Peterson, but I ended up getting sick, so I didn't go. But I finished my book. For all those of you who don't know, I finished my book last week. So very excited about that. My team and I are all meeting and going through, okay, what is next and the publishing phase and all that. We're actually looking at a publisher that can get the book out within 90 days. And I'm thinking I might do that and have this first release be to all of the people that I know and love, and honestly help you all, or ask you all to help me craft whatever program should come after, because y'all knowing has radically transformed my life and brought so much healing. And I want to, oh gosh, I just know that this epidemic of emotional unhealth is something that can really be solved by and through us assuming radical responsibility to know who we are, change our beliefs, and change our behaviors. So on my way home, I stopped through, after Phoenix, I went to Texas. I went to visit my brother and sister-in-law, and they had this little, okay, let me see if you can see it. I think you can. Hooray. Okay. They had these Aussie Trace Minerals electrolytes, and you can see it here. That's a bottle. They said that they were doing research because my sister, she'll listen to a whole bunch of health podcasts. And she told me while I was there that there was a podcast that she was listening to, and a woman doesn't let her children eat any foods with dye in them, and any kind of dyes. And so they were at the park, or at the fair, I'm sorry. They were at the fair, and there was a snow cone truck. And obviously you have to let your children have snow cones. So all the kids, there's 5 of them. They're all in good moods, all super happy. And then she lets them have snow cones. And so her son picked this blue raspberry. So, within a matter of minutes, his mouth is stained blue, and he is miserable and crying. And his mood shifted so fast just by having that dye. It was wild. She said, I've never seen something so night and day with no trigger. Nothing happened. There was no change. When we're talking about A/B testing, it's like we need one variable to test. We need to keep everything else the same. Otherwise, if we change too many variables, we're not going to be able to know what was the instigating trigger that caused it to act out of alignment and have be faulty testing. So the only variable that changed throughout the entire day was this blue dye in the snow cone. And yes, Melanie, I know, absolutely Melina, they have to have snow cones. And so, though, in so doing, her kid's mood just completely changed. And it was just so notable. Y'all, we don't realize what we're eating. And I think that that's part of the danger, is when we don't know what we're eating, we don't know how our bodies are going to be impacted as a result. Who was I talking to? Oh my gosh, it sounded so fun. It was in Alaska. They'll do these like molasses paddles where it will be a whole bunch of snow. They'll dribble maple syrup that's freshly tapped from the maple tree, so we know what it is. And then they'll take a little wooden pallet and like run it along and create candy, maple candy. So like there are really healthy, wonderful ways for us to be enjoying treats and sugar and all things that are natural yet delicious and so delightful. We don't have to withhold joy. And I think that that's something that I've had a misconception around. I started a tangent and I'm coming back. So these electrolytes. Well, my sister told me by way of her listening to these health podcasts, and just something that she learned was that all of our water, for the most part in the US, they're going through such a heavy filtration process that it's stripping out all of our nutrients. And so we're effectively not drinking anything of real substance. It was wild. I was in Lake Como by a waterfall, and the waterfall had a cistern. It like fed into a cistern in town where you could go and fill up your water bottle. And I'm talking about like going back to Roman days, and there's a cistern and it's pouring out fresh water. And it was just so cool to go take our water bottles. It's from the earth, you know? And so there's just so much dilution in the quality of what we're putting in our mouth, what we're putting into our bodies by way of food or otherwise. And so I bought this, and what they told you to do was to have 40 drops a day. And it's just electrolytes. And it has calcium, it has magnesium, chloride, sodium, and potassium. But 24% of your daily magnesium is in this, and chloride is 15%. So I wanted to share that with you today. That's my live. Thank you for those of you who joined me. Melina, Kasem, it's good to hear from you guys. Christian, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate this process. It's really good for me to just continue to practice kind of honestly, the art of creation. I said this on Wednesday, but as I was sitting and really moving through the why must we know? And one of the core reasons for knowing is creation. Because if we don't know who we are, we're never going to be hooked up to an authentic core self from which we can create something original, something genuine. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.